Story disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction and is intended for entertainment purposes only. The content includes dark themes, horror elements, and fictional depictions of rituals and sacrifices that are purely imaginative and not reflective of any real-life practices or beliefs. Viewer discretion is advised. This video is not suitable for younger audiences, and parental guidance is recommended. The story does not endorse or promote any harmful behavior, violence, or dangerous activities. Please note that all characters, events, and settings are entirely fictional and created for the purpose of storytelling. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events, is purely coincidental. In this episode, Kwame and Amina's battle against the Shadow Realm grows more intense and the stakes higher than ever. They face a powerful enforcer, desperate to disrupt its grip on the villagers, only to realize this is just a small glimpse of the looming darkness. Their search for answers leads them to a forbidden library filled with dark knowledge, guarded by ancient spirits and twisted trials. As they uncover the secrets of the Shadow Realm, they learn that victory comes with a devastating price. A soul must be sacrificed to close the rift. Amina steps up, but the sacrifice isn't the end. Dark forces demand even more, pushing Kwame to the brink as he contemplates an act of ultimate betrayal. With a monstrous entity rising from the shadows and Nia's arrival complicating his choice, the tension reaches a fever pitch. Will Kwame find a way to seal the darkness without losing everything, or will his decisions shatter the bonds he's fought so hard to protect? Stay tuned, as every choice carries dire consequences. Kwame gritted his teeth, his mind racing. The enforcer was powerful, but they had to find a way to counter its dark magic. The villagers' terror was palpable, their faces illuminated by the flickering shadows that writhed around them. Amina raised her staff, its tip glowing with a fierce, bright light. We need to disrupt its connection to the Shadow Realm. If we can sever its link, we might weaken it. Kwame nodded, understanding her plan. They had to act quickly. Summoning his remaining strength, Kwame channeled his own dark energy into a concentrated beam. The beam shot towards the enforcer, but the shadowy figure easily deflected it with a wave of its hand. "You are foolish to challenge the enforcers," the figure snarled. "You will find no respite here. The Shadow Realm's power is inexhaustible." As the enforcer's dark energy continued to lash out, Kwame and Amina realized that their combined powers were not enough to face this formidable foe. Desperation gave rise to a daring idea. Amina began to chant an incantation, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. The air shimmered with a mystical energy as she invoked an ancient spell meant to amplify their own powers and counteract the dark magic. The shadows began to react violently to the spell, writhing and twisting as if in agony. The enforcer's form flickered, momentarily losing its stability. Seizing the opportunity, Kwame focused his energy, directing a powerful surge of light towards the enforcer. The dark figure recoiled, its malevolent grin fading as the spell hit its mark. The shadows around it dissipated, and for a moment, the oppressive darkness lifted. The villagers, who had been paralyzed with fear, now scrambled to safety as the enforcer staggered, its power visibly waning. "You think you have won?" the enforcer rasped, its voice trembling. "This is but a glimpse of the darkness that awaits. You will find no solace in your victories." With a final, furious wave, the enforcer vanished into a swirl of shadows, leaving the village in a state of chaos. The villagers slowly emerged from their hiding places, their faces pale and shaken. Kwame and Amina, exhausted but determined, began to reassure the frightened villagers. Elder Kofi approached them, his expression grave. "You have faced a formidable foe, but we cannot ignore the fact that this is only the beginning. The Shadow Realm's influence is growing stronger, and we must prepare for what lies ahead." Kwame nodded, his mind racing with the implications of their encounter. "We need to learn more about the enforcers and the Shadow Realm. There must be a way to close the rift that has been opened." Amina agreed, her face set with resolve. We need to seek out those who have knowledge of the shadow realm. There may be ancient texts or powerful artifacts that can help us understand and combat this threat. The villagers, though still shaken, began to rally together, their fear giving way to a steely determination. The villagers' resilience was renewed, and the task of rebuilding began amidst the lingering shadows. As Kwame and Amina prepared to leave the village in search of more answers, the weight of their responsibility pressed heavily upon them. The darkness that had descended upon their home was not an isolated event but part of a larger, more insidious threat. They knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but they had no choice but to confront the darkness head-on. As they departed, the shadows of the forest seemed to whisper secrets, their murmurs a constant reminder of the unseen threat that loomed over them. The echoes of the enforcer's words haunted them, a chilling omen of the challenges that lay ahead. The journey to uncover the truth and confront the forces of darkness had only just begun. With each step, Kwame and Amina ventured deeper into a world of shadows and magic, their resolve tested by the trials that awaited them. Kwame and Amina's journey led them to a remote and ancient library hidden deep within the mountains, said to hold knowledge long forgotten by the world. The library was rumored to be guarded by powerful enchantments and dark forces, but it was their only hope for uncovering the secrets of the Shadow Realm. The path to the library was treacherous, winding through dark, dense forests and rocky terrain. As they approached, the landscape seemed to darken further, the air thick with an ominous stillness. The entrance to the library was obscured by a veil of enchantments, a shimmering barrier that flickered with an eerie light. Kwame and Amina exchanged determined glances. "We have to find our way through," Kwame said, his voice resolute. "This knowledge is crucial." Amina stepped forward, her staff glowing with a soft light. "I'll attempt to dispel the enchantments. Be ready for anything." As Amina began to chant an incantation, the barrier shimmered and wavered. The air grew colder, and a sense of malevolence seemed to seep from the library's entrance. Dark whispers filled the air, their meanings indistinct but their tone unmistakably threatening. Suddenly, a series of ghastly apparitions materialized around them, ghostly figures cloaked in shadows, their eyes hollow and filled with anguish. They moaned and reached out with spectral hands, attempting to drag Kwame and Amina into the darkness. Kwame and Amina fought off the apparitions, their powers flaring in defense. The air crackled with dark energy as they repelled the ghosts, their efforts focused on keeping the malevolent spirits at bay. Amina's incantation grew more fervent, the barrier weakening with each passing moment. With a final burst of light, the barrier dissolved, revealing the entrance to the library. Kwame and Amina stumbled inside, their breaths coming in ragged gusts. The interior was a vast, dimly lit expanse filled with towering shelves of ancient tomes and scrolls. The air was thick with dust and the scent of old parchment. The library was eerily silent, the only sounds the faint rustling of pages and the distant echo of dripping water. They began to search through the library, their eyes scanning the shelves for any clues about the Shadow Realm and the enforcers. Hours passed as they pored over ancient texts and manuscripts, deciphering cryptic passages and unraveling long-forgotten spells. Amina finally unearthed a dusty, leather-bound tome with an elaborate symbol embossed on the cover, a sigil resembling a twisted, shadowy figure. She opened it carefully, revealing pages filled with intricate diagrams and arcane symbols. "This must be it," she said, her voice filled with awe. "It describes the Shadow Realm and the rituals used to manipulate its power." Kwame leaned over the tome, his eyes widening as he read the descriptions. "It mentions a ritual to close the rift between our world and the Shadow Realm. We might be able to use this to stop the enforcers and seal the darkness." As they continued to study the tome, the library seemed to come alive with a dark energy. The shadows on the walls twisted and coiled, and the temperature dropped sharply. A sense of impending doom hung heavy in the air. The whispers grew louder, their voices merging into a cacophony of anguish and rage. Kwame and Amina could feel the presence of the shadow realm pressing in on them, its power resonating through the library. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, an ancient guardian of the library, bound to protect its secrets. The figure's eyes glowed with an intense, malevolent light, and it moved with a grace that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. "You have trespassed into forbidden territory," the guardian intoned, its voice echoing with ancient power. "The knowledge you seek comes with a price. Are you prepared to pay it?" Kwame and Amina exchanged uneasy glances. They had come seeking answers, but now faced with this formidable guardian, they knew their challenge was far from over. "We seek to stop the darkness," Kwame said firmly. "We need to close the rift and protect our world from the shadow realm." The guardian's gaze seemed to pierce through them. "To wield the knowledge of the shadow realm is to embrace its power and its curses. You must prove your worth by overcoming the trials that await you." As the guardian spoke, the library's shadows began to swirl and converge, forming a series of dark, twisting paths that led deeper into the library's depths. The whispers grew louder, their tones more insistent and threatening. Kwame and Amina steeled themselves, knowing that their journey through the library was only beginning. The path ahead was fraught with peril and uncertainty, but they had no choice but to face the trials and uncover the secrets that would determine their fate. The darkness of the library seemed to pulse with an ancient, malevolent energy, and as they ventured deeper, they knew that each step brought them closer to the heart of the shadow realm's power. The trials that awaited them would test their resolve and their very souls, but they were determined to confront the darkness and protect their world from the encroaching shadows. Kwame and Amina stood at the edge of a dark corridor, its walls lined with ancient runes that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. The air was thick with an oppressive darkness, and the temperature dropped as they ventured deeper into the library. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements unpredictable and eerie. The ancient guardian loomed behind them, its eyes glowing with an intense, otherworldly light. "To gain the knowledge you seek, you must face the trials of the library," the guardian intoned. "Only those who prove their worth will be granted the power to challenge the shadow realm." Kwame and Amina nodded, their determination unwavering despite the growing sense of dread. They had no choice but to face the trials ahead if they hoped to stop the darkness encroaching upon their world. As they entered the corridor, the air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to whisper dark secrets. The walls were lined with ancient tomes and arcane artifacts, each radiating a dark, sinister energy. The corridor split into several paths, each marked with a different symbol. "This must be part of the trial," Amina said, her voice barely audible. "We need to choose the correct path." Kwame examined the symbols, their meanings inscrutable. One symbol depicted a twisted serpent encircling a shattered sun, while another showed a distorted face wreathed in flames. The third symbol was an intricate maze, its pathways convoluted and labyrinthine. "Which path do we take?" Kwame asked, his gaze shifting between the symbols. Amina closed her eyes, reaching out with her senses. "The serpent symbol, it represents transformation and power. I think it's the path we need to take." They chose the path marked by the serpent symbol and ventured forward. The corridor narrowed, and the air grew thick with a dark, oppressive energy. The shadows seemed to close in around them, their whispers growing louder and more insistent. As they progressed, the shadows began to coalesce into grotesque, nightmarish forms, twisted creatures with eyes that glowed with an eerie, malevolent light. They moved with unnatural grace, their forms shifting and changing as they closed in on Kwame and Amina. Kwame summoned his dark energy, creating a barrier of shadow to fend off the creatures. Amina raised her staff, its light piercing through the darkness and repelling the twisted beings. The creatures hissed and recoiled, their forms dissolving into the shadows as they were driven back. "Keep moving," Amina shouted, her voice strained with effort. "We need to reach the end of this corridor." They pressed on, the corridor growing ever darker. The whispers of the shadows grew more intense, their voices a cacophony of anguish and malice. The temperature dropped sharply, and frost began to form on the walls. At the end of the corridor, they found a massive, ornate door adorned with the serpent symbol. It was etched with intricate patterns and glowed with a dark, pulsating light. The door was sealed by an elaborate locking mechanism, a series of interlocking gears and runes that seemed to shift and change with every passing moment. Amina examined the mechanism, her eyes scanning the shifting patterns. "We need to align the runes in the correct sequence to unlock the door. It's a complex puzzle." Kwame nodded, his focus sharpening. "I'll keep the shadows at bay. You work on the puzzle." As Amina worked on the mechanism, the shadows in the corridor grew more agitated. They writhed and twisted, forming into a monstrous, serpentine figure with glowing eyes. The creature's mouth opened in a silent, gaping roar, and a wave of dark energy surged towards Kwame and Amina. Kwame raised his hands, summoning a torrent of dark energy to counter the creature's assault. The energy crackled and surged, creating a barrier of shadow that held back the onslaught. The serpent figure lunged, its fangs dripping with a dark, corrosive substance. Amina, her hands shaking, worked feverishly to solve the puzzle. The runes shifted and clicked into place, the locking mechanism responding to her efforts. The door began to glow brighter, its energy intensifying as the runes aligned. With a final, triumphant click, the door swung open, revealing a vast chamber bathed in a sickly green light. The chamber was filled with towering shelves of ancient, forbidden knowledge, tomes bound in dark leather and scrolls inscribed with arcane symbols. As they stepped into the chamber, the serpent figure let out a final, anguished roar before dissipating into the shadows. The whispers of the shadows grew fainter, replaced by an eerie silence. Kwame and Amina approached the shelves, their eyes scanning the texts for the knowledge they sought. The air was thick with dark magic, and the chamber seemed to hum with an unsettling energy. Amina picked up a large, ancient tome bound in blackened leather. The cover was inscribed with a series of runes that seemed to pulse with a dark, otherworldly light. She opened it carefully, revealing pages filled with detailed diagrams and descriptions of the Shadow Realm. "This is it," Amina said, her voice filled with awe. "This book contains the knowledge we need to understand the Shadow Realm and the Enforcers." Kwame nodded, his gaze fixed on the tome. "We need to study this carefully. The information here could be crucial in our fight against the darkness." As they began to delve into the tome, the chamber's oppressive atmosphere seemed to close in around them. The air grew colder, and the whispers of the shadows returned, their voices filled with a sense of foreboding. The knowledge they uncovered would reveal the secrets of the Shadow Realm, but it would also come with a price. The trials they had faced were only the beginning, and the darkness that awaited them was more insidious and dangerous than they could have ever imagined. With each revelation, Kwame and Amina realized that their struggle was far from over. The path ahead was fraught with peril and uncertainty, and the shadowy forces they faced were more formidable than they had ever anticipated. The journey to confront the darkness was only beginning, and the trials they had endured were just the first steps on a path that would test their resolve and their very souls. Kwame and Amina, now armed with forbidden knowledge, had to confront the harsh reality that their journey was far from over. As they studied the tome in the chamber, they found detailed accounts of ancient rituals and dark magic that spoke of sacrifices and profound dangers. The chamber's oppressive atmosphere seemed to close in around them as they read about the Shadow Realm's history. The text detailed a powerful ritual capable of sealing the rift between their world and the Shadow Realm. But it also revealed that such a ritual demanded a heavy price, one that would test their very humanity. Kwame's brow furrowed as he scanned the pages. "This ritual requires a soul to be bound to the Shadow Realm as a guardian. It's a sacrificial act, and it could mean..." Amina interrupted, her voice trembling. "It means one of us must sacrifice themselves to protect the others. It's a choice between saving our world or losing ourselves." Kwame and Amina exchanged somber glances, the weight of their situation pressing heavily upon them. The knowledge they had sought came with an unbearable price. They had to make a decision, one that would determine not only their fate but the fate of their world. As they continued to study the tomb, the shadows in the chamber seemed to grow darker and more restless. The whispers grew louder, their voices a chorus of anguish and despair. The oppressive energy in the chamber intensified, making it clear that their time was running out. Suddenly, the chamber's walls began to shift and warp, the shelves of books and scrolls twisting into grotesque shapes. The floor cracked open, revealing a chasm filled with writhing shadows. From the depths of the chasm emerged a monstrous, dark entity, a grotesque fusion of shadow and despair. The entity's eyes glowed with an intense, malevolent light, and its presence radiated a palpable sense of dread. It moved with unnatural grace, its form shifting and changing as it approached Kwame and Amina. "You have sought forbidden knowledge," the entity intoned, its voice a haunting whisper. "You have awakened the guardians of the shadow realm. The price of such knowledge is not easily borne." Kwame and Amina braced themselves, their dark powers flaring in response to the entity's presence. They knew they had to face this new threat if they hoped to escape the chamber and complete the ritual. The entity lunged at them, its form shifting into a swirling vortex of shadows. Kwame and Amina fought back with their dark magic, their attacks clashing with the entity's power. The chamber was filled with a tempest of energy, the air crackling with dark forces. As they battled the entity, the shadows in the chamber seemed to grow more aggressive, their forms writhing and twisting. The whispers grew louder, their voices a constant reminder of the impending sacrifice. In the midst of the chaos, Kwame and Amina realized that the entity was not just a physical threat but a manifestation of their own fears and doubts. It embodied the darkness within them, feeding off their uncertainty and despair. Amina, her voice resolute, began to chant a spell from the tomb, focusing her energy on dispelling the entities. Kwame and Amina emerged from the ancient library, their minds heavy with the knowledge and the dark magic they had encountered. They ventured into the heart of a dense forest, guided by the tomb's instructions to find a sacred site where they could perform the ritual. The forest was shrouded in an unnatural mist, the trees towering above them like silent sentinels. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the silence was occasionally broken by distant, eerie sounds. They reached a clearing at the forest's center, a place marked by an ancient stone altar covered in dark runes. The altar seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and the ground around it was etched with intricate symbols. Kwame and Amina approached the altar, their hearts pounding with a mix of anticipation and dread. The tomb had detailed the ritual's requirements, but the final step was shrouded in ambiguity. They had to summon a powerful guardian spirit, but the nature of this spirit and the exact sacrifice it demanded were not clear. Amina spread out the ritual components on the altar, rare herbs, enchanted crystals, and a darkened vial containing a mysterious substance. She began to arrange the components according to the instructions in the tomb, her hands shaking with the weight of their task. Kwame, standing nearby, cast a protective barrier around the altar using his dark magic. The barrier shimmered with a dark energy, creating a protective shield against any potential threats. The forest around them seemed to grow quieter, the oppressive silence a stark contrast to the tension of the ritual. As the final components were placed and the ritual was ready to begin, a chilling wind swept through the clearing. The mist thickened, and shadowy figures began to emerge from the trees, their forms twisted and grotesque. The guardian spirits were arriving, their presence heralded by an eerie, mournful wail. They were tall, spectral beings with eyes that glowed like embers and forms that shifted between solid and ethereal. Their appearance was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a reminder of the ancient magic they were about to confront. Amina began the incantation, her voice echoing through the clearing as she chanted the ancient words. The air crackled with energy, and the symbols on the ground began to glow with a dark, pulsating light. The guardian spirits watched in silence, their eyes fixed on the ritual. As the incantation reached its climax, a powerful surge of energy erupted from the altar. The ground shook when a blinding flash of light illuminated the clearing. The guardian spirits let out a collective, haunting cry as the ritual's energy reached its peak. When the light faded, a massive, shadowy figure emerged from the altar. The figure was a towering, monstrous entity, its form a swirling vortex of darkness and malevolent power. Its eyes glowed with an intense, fiery light, and its presence radiated an aura of overwhelming dread. "You have summoned me," the entity intoned, its voice a deep, resonant rumble. "But to fulfill your request, you must offer something of great value." Kwame and Amina exchanged fearful glances. The tome had not specified the nature of the offering required, and the entity's demand was both unexpected and unsettling. "What must we offer?" Amina asked, her voice trembling. The entity's gaze fixed on them with an unsettling intensity. "One of you must sacrifice your very essence to bind the rift between the worlds. Only then will the ritual be complete." Kwame and Amina were stunned. The choice was devastating, and the reality of their situation hit them with full force. They had to make a sacrifice that would either condemn one of them to an eternity of darkness or risk failing their mission and letting the Shadow Realm overrun their world. The tension in the clearing was palpable, and the air was filled with an eerie silence as they contemplated their next move. The entity watched them with an inscrutable expression, its form shifting and undulating in the darkness. Amina took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "I will make the sacrifice," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "If it means saving our world, I am willing to give up everything." Kwame's eyes widened in shock and grief. "No, Amina. There must be another way." The entity's gaze remained fixed on them, its eyes glowing with a dark satisfaction. "The choice is yours to make. The ritual requires a soul to be bound to the darkness, and the sacrifice must be willingly given." As the gravity of Amina's decision sank in, the clearing seemed to grow colder, and the shadows around them deepened. The ritual's outcome hung in the balance, and the price of their victory was becoming increasingly apparent. With Amina now bound to the Shadow Realm, the clearing fell into a profound silence. The once vibrant ritual circle had become a mere shadow of its former self, the intricate symbols now faint and darkened. Kwame, his face etched with grief, remained kneeling beside the altar, the weight of his loss overwhelming. The guardian spirits, their forms flickering with a subdued light, began to wail in a mournful chorus. Their haunting cries filled the clearing, echoing through the trees like the lament of ancient souls. The spirits' sorrowful voices resonated with the raw power of the Shadow Realm, amplifying the chilling atmosphere. Kwame struggled to rise, his hands trembling as he gathered the remnants of the ritual components. The air was thick with an oppressive darkness, and the once familiar forest now felt alien and foreboding. The shadows seemed to dance around him, whispering secrets of despair and darkness. In the aftermath of the ritual, the ground beneath the altar cracked open, revealing a gaping chasm that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. From the depths of the chasm, a dark, serpentine figure emerged, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent. It was a creature of pure shadow, its form shifting and writhing as it emerged from the abyss. The entity, now free from its binding, loomed over Kwame, its presence radiating a terrifying power. "You have done well to summon me," it intoned, its voice a low, rumbling growl. "But the price of your sacrifice is not yet complete." Kwame's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the implications of the creature's words. The ritual had demanded a soul, but the creature's presence suggested that there was more to the price than they had anticipated. "What do you want?" Kwame demanded, his voice filled with a mix of defiance and fear. The creature's eyes glowed brighter, casting an eerie light on the surrounding trees. "The sacrifice of one soul is but the beginning. To fully seal the rift between the worlds, you must offer something more, an act of ultimate betrayal." Kwame's blood ran cold as he processed the creature's demand. The notion of betrayal was a chilling concept, one that carried deep, personal ramifications. The darkness within him, once a source of power, now seemed to be closing in, feeding off his fear and desperation. The creature continued, its voice a chilling whisper. You must betray someone you hold dear. Only then will the rift be sealed and the balance restored. Kwame's mind raced as he grappled with the horrifying choice before him. The notion of betrayal was not just a personal blow, it was a violation of the very essence of his humanity. He glanced around, his eyes searching for a solution, but the forest remained silent, the shadows offering no respite. In the distance, he heard a faint rustling. As he turned, he saw a figure emerging from the mist. It was Nia, her face marked by an expression of grim determination. She had come to aid them, her presence a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. Kwame's heart sank as he realized the enormity of the decision he now faced. To complete the ritual and seal the rift, he would have to betray someone he loved, someone who had fought alongside him in the battle against Kito. The darkness threatened to consume him, and the weight of the decision bore down upon him like a suffocating shroud. Nia approached, her eyes filled with concern. Kwame, what's happening? What did the ritual require? Kwame looked at her, his mind a tempest of conflicting emotions. The creature's demand was clear, and the choice he had to make was both devastating and inescapable. As he met Nia's gaze, the darkness within him surged, whispering of betrayal and sacrifice. The clearing was filled with a tense silence, the shadows growing longer and more menacing. The entity watched with a dark satisfaction, its eyes reflecting the turmoil in Kwame's soul. The moment of truth had arrived, and the price of their victory was more harrowing than they had ever imagined. The price to pay being so high, is Kwame going to make the right choice? You will find out in the next episode.